Hello, PG listeners. When some things go on through your mind first thing in the morning because your brain is activating, especially if you're drinking coffee, you just got to pick up the recorder. So here it goes. I remember back around 2010 when I had my third student in boxing. I told him, I said, I'm the last, of my school. And he was like, okay, cool. Time goes on. So, we do the usual, because it takes 18 months of basic training. So I just go straight to the boxing, get used to moving around, get used to weaving and bobbing and punching and feeling punches and blah, 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 because you're going to spend a lot of time in the ring, regardless of what formations you learn, you're going to spend a lot of time in the ring. So we just go straight to that usually. We'll do a few stretches, a few formations, hit the ring. I don't hit them. I let them punch on me. I might tap them in the shoulder so they can feel my power or whatever, but I don't hit them. I usually let people hit me. So anyway, moving on. It's around 2009. So because I had a few students in other parts of Texas, but I think I had we'll just say 2 here, 3 here in Houston. So grand total 4. Yeah. Anyway, so one of my students, this is around 2019, he says, you were the last system mate. I'm the last system mate. So I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'm the last person you showed. And I was like, So I tried to explain to him what I showed you was not system 8. For starters, you'd have to qualify to be system 8. In most cases, it's kind of like college martial arts. It's kung fu. It takes a lifetime. So I showed him some things, and he's like, whoa, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. Of course, you weren't ready for this. I showed him some advanced things, advanced judo and blah, blah, blah. So to make a long story short, this recording for someone who's wanting to know a little more details of how I'm a last system 8. I looked it up online. There's a lot of different system 8 system in China. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then I put that on Instagram, and I explained that I met a real another dragon from another school, and if I'm not mistaken, it was the same thing Bruce Lee studied, Wing Chun. He showed me some Wing Chun, pretty interesting stuff, very similar to System 8. We fight forward, 4 fighters, blah, blah, blah. So I try to make this long story short. So there's lots of System 8s in China. So I'm like, cool, great, awesome. So I'm like, okay, that's great information. But reality is, I remember watching a video. This is very important to share with the world. This guy, he says he was in the 60s. He says back when he was growing up in the 50s, there were lots of martial arts schools that came and gone. And he eyewitnessed as a kid and to a teenager, probably 20 to 30 schools die out. So he had a lot of small schools back in those days. So that's the story of my school. It was small, maybe 15 people, blah, 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 blah. So to make a long story short, if someone wants a little more detail, I would explain to them, it's just like ballet or sports or anything. Before you reach, to qualify for a certain level, you have to be a certain level. So let's just say System 8s, they were from what I was told, they were already advanced. They weren't necessarily black belt, but they were already advanced. So the 4 things that I learned stories of, because it takes a lifetime to begin to master the basics of Kung Fu, was the stories of the horse stance or forward stance. So I pretty much mastered that to where if two or three people can't move me if I'm in one spot. And then it took me 20 years to be able to do push-ups on my fingertips, not your fingers. There's a difference between your fingers and there's a difference between your fingertips. It took 20 years for that. And then it took 20 years from what I heard, the vibration strike, where you can, other objects crack behind the other objects, which I never reached as far as clay tile, roof tile, but I pretty much get that down because I've done it with top ramen noodles. It takes a few times to warm up. You can crack objects behind the object without the first object cracking. So that was 3 things. So that's kind of, giving it the basis of that. The person will not qualify for the school unless you reach a certain level also keep in mind, you have like 3 levels in enlightenment. For example, the teacher may share with you 75 to 85% of enlightenment, and 15 to 25% you discover. That's the first level. Then the second level, they only going to show you 50%, and then the 50%, other 50% you have to discover. And then you have, I'm trying not to laugh, the teacher's only going to show you 9 to 10%, and the other 90% you got to discover. And this is when you have the monks, they go out into the wilderness, and they go out into the snow and all that. So that's just an example of the best way I can explain. It would have been great to show, System 8 and all that stuff. And, but reality is you wouldn't even qualify. So maybe that explains a little more people as myself, not just me. There's other last dragons of different schools, but my school particularly, a small school that died out in the 1980s, maybe that's a little more explanatory. Number one, you had to qualify to be in a school such as mine. Number two, you had 3 stages of enlightenment. And number 3, there are certain stories, which I passed all of the stories, obstacles, the horse dance, the on the fingertip push-ups, and objects, cracking objects behind objects. Just for example, schools have certain levels. You would know when you reach a certain level. It took me like 20 years. And so what they say, Kung Fu, it takes a lifetime to learn, is very, very true. So that might be a little more explanatory for my art buyers. Can I confirm, besides Tai Chi that I show in Act 7, can I confirm that I'm the last of my school? Maybe that's a little more confirmation that will help people understand. Because by me showing you my formations, which I haven't showed the world yet, when I do show the world the formations, what it look like, it's just we do everything with 3. So you're going to see a formation of 3. So that's all I have to say. But like I said, that's another channel for that martial art channel. They would see the dragon, the upside down dragon, the waiter, the tiger, the lion, the snake, the prime mantis, the frog, and the eagle. They would see it in the formation, and that's all I know. But that's all I can say about that. I think Act 7 is more impressive than looking at the System 8. System 8 is cool looking at, but Act 7 to me is more entertaining. But that's just my opinion. So that's all I have to say. Champ out. Thank you for your time, listeners. Today's date is 11/22/2024. Time 9 a.m. Thank you for your time. Champ, I'm out.